Introduction. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, but today I would add that to maintain all of our necessities, the world sorely needs and requires the greatest invention of all time, an autonomous government. She may be voted someday as the most beautiful woman in the world. Her beauty will not fade. It will last for the rest of our existence on this planet if we should be so lucky. Who is she? She is the face of the autonomous government. Her name? Terra. She walks around unprotected by any security forces in every community around the world. She is constantly among us, asking how we are, what we're doing, giving us reassurances and guidance and encouragement, as well as inspiration every day. She is everywhere at the same moment. She is in our every thought. She's in our dreams. She knows us all, every single one of us, even though we are billions. She knows our daily needs. She can make thousands upon thousands of operations that concern each and every individual every second of every day. She knows all of our hopes and dreams for the future. And best of all, she knows how to give them to us without taking anything away from anyone else. This book is my introduction to the world of a completely new concept that is all about the establishment of an autonomous government. In other words, a government that is completely independent of input from any individual human being, but at the same time, a government that is able to care for every individual human being, as well as all other life forms on the planet. She will become as familiar to us all as our own mothers. She will love us, watch over us, protect us and keep us safe even more than our own mothers have it in their hearts and muscles to do. I call her Terra. Before you reject this idea in whole or in part, compare this new modern and technological approach to the problem of leadership with the antiquated set of ideas that have been handed down to us for centuries. We in this country and around the world are governed mainly by rich white men, mainly educated in preparatory schools for the wealthy and privileged class. Most of them have no ideas about how the rest of us live or anything about our needs. They are mostly murderers, liars, and thieves. They are unfit to rule over a strain of bacteria, and yet they rule over us humans with impunity. Then, when they come to a Congress or Parliament, they are immediately swarmed by what are known as lobbyists, paid professional bribery experts who are trained in how to pay money to the elected officials in return for a promise of a vote on any given issue of the day that impacts their sponsor corporations. This is simply a modern form of tyranny, the rule of money and power, without principles, plain and simple. What we suffer today has no resemblance to any form of democracy that I know about. And worse, this system is also a self-destructive one that is now out of control and threatening the very existence of the planet and the survival of our species. It must be changed and without delay. The kind of government I have in mind for not only the United States, but also for the world, which is detailed for the first time in this book, is based on the computer technology that we are all enjoying more and more today. A new breed of thinking known as artificial intelligence, AI. But it is also built upon the ages-old mythology that there is a spirit in the earth that serves us and protects us, provides for us and watches over us. Some might call it the basis for a new spirituality that is also ancient. I call the evolution of our minds, the creation of this new mind, the basis for a new government that can finally deliver equality, brotherhood, and justice for all. I give this new form of government a female facade because the spirit of the earth has often been defined as Mother Earth. And in earlier works of mine, I have dubbed our planet as the womb of all life in the universe. There could be other wombs of life out there somewhere in the vastness of space, but as of the day of this writing, there are none known. This may be the only womb of life in the entire universe, and therefore it requires our utmost attention to preserving it. The cover of this book, which depicts how I would like the face of the autonomous robotic government to look like, was itself created by an early artificial intelligence program. It's the kind of face that I believe would be accepted by the largest number of people around the planet so that they may all feel comfortable enough to comply with all or most of her ideas. Why we should want to use a female interpretation of the artificial government should be obvious to most of us now living today. First of all, men have had their chance, being the most prevalent rulers of this planet for millions of years. Where did they lead us? To the edge of oblivion. So can a female iteration of leadership do any worse? Probably not. How we can infuse the female gender into a machine is a subject that I cover in a later chapter. It's not easy, but it can be accomplished at some point. Most of us see artificial intelligence as being gender neutral, and that may be true for now. But someday I can imagine a male and a female version of our artificial government in a kind of entangled love affair. More on that later. Today, everyone seems to know that our technology is evolving far faster than the human animal itself. And the rate of evolution of our technological wonders is accelerating every minute. This can only mean one thing for the future of our species. We'd better start adapting our systems and our own biology to the evolution of our own devices, or else we could someday become completely irrelevant. I strongly believe that the United States of America, as it exists today, under an antiquated, tired, worn-out representative form of democracy, is doomed. It is doomed because this horse and buggy form of rulemaking was conceived for a few small colonies of people who lived mainly in a half a dozen small towns with hundreds of small farms in the outlying areas. For a new country of farmers, tailors, horse and carriage drivers, shoemakers, printers, silversmiths, tinkerers, this simple form of government that requires no electricity to run, no internet, no communications at all, the system of a Congress, a president, and a judicial system to check and balance each other was good enough for the time. However, in order to create the rules and regulations that millions must abide by under the constant evolution of technology, such as we have in this modern world, something far more streamlined has to replace it. We all know that by now, especially after living under the present administration, which appears to be making it up as they go along, they've even created a new form of propaganda, or what they call fake news. And whenever there has been a time in history where a huge choice of two paths is standing right before us, one good and one evil, this is the most pressing and imminent divergence that we have ever faced as a species. In a previous book of mine, Antimatter, which is science fiction, one of the main characters asks, if we can live with autonomous vehicles, Why can't we use the same kind of artificial intelligence for an autonomous government? This is how this book became a reality. It was suggested to me out of the futuristic story I had completely made up that included an autonomous government, which I dubbed IOPS, IOPS, or the Internet of Planetary Sustainability, which is the underlying foundation of principles laid down here. And so, yes, the concept of an autonomous government springs forth from a science fiction story, just like our modern cell phones sprang out of the early Star Trek TV series of the 1960s. From Star Wars, we are probably going to see laser swords soon, and I don't mean the toys, or perhaps antimatter-powered spaceships like the Enterprise or the Millennium Falcon. Finally, I must add that the next political revolution will probably not be held in the United States because we comprise the most corrupt and corruptible government in the world today, and our leaders have gained decades-long experience in how to reject anything that aids the majority of their people while making us believe they are doing it for our own good. Autonomous government is most likely to explode onto the world stage from a country like Russia, China, France, perhaps even in Iran. These are countries where the people are totally fed up with their present situations, virtual dictatorships. They are not afraid to march in the streets to demand better. And more importantly, they are not consumed night and day by the statistics and gossip of professional sports. They are not engaged in water cooler talk about the next big game, the latest trade, the brands of shoes the athletes wear, etc. In most other countries, the people sometimes get overstimulated about soccer, but not in the way that Americans get super hyped up about football, baseball, and hockey. In most countries, they are singing patriotic songs in the stadium while the athletes run around willy-nilly on the field before them. Someday soon, this chorus in the bleachers of thousands of voices coming together on one common dream of the future may create our greatest hope. With the publishing of this book, I am confident that the next great political revolution will begin. I believe in my heart and soul that the making of the rules of the road should now be turned over to an artificial intelligence. I believe that the controls we now have in place and the new ones yet to be invented, outlined here in a future chapter, are more than sufficient to allay any fears of a takeover of the artificial brain. I believe in the spirit of the earth, that this spirit is crying out to us all today for our aid and our mercy, and that this spirit can be programmed into an artificial brain to protect and preserve our Mother Earth for thousands of generations to come. I believe that all throughout our evolution on this planet, we have been forced to gradually improve our consciousness, and I believe that this constant challenging of our souls and our minds is pointing to something much greater than ourselves, an entity that wants us to succeed, but which believes in our freedom and therefore allows us to make our own way into the future. I believe that our greatest moments are lying just ahead because these moments are our greatest challenge, and therefore our greatest victory will soon be forthcoming. But this all depends on what we all do next. And one last thought. When I was in junior high school in my hometown of Natick, Massachusetts, I had an inspiring teacher who was giving us all, kids, a lecture about World War I. The lecture was themed around the Latin phrase pro patria more, or to die for one's country. At the time, I thought about this phrase and agreed that to die for one's country could be a noble thing. But I had in mind giving up one's life for the country that I could see and feel and smell and taste just outside my window. During this lecture, the warm spring breezes graced me with the buzzing of the bees, the songs of the birds in the trees, the babbling brooks, the swaying of the trees to the music of life, the squirrels prancing around in the branches. I knew even at this age a gratefulness for the beautiful and wonderful world of people and nature that surrounded me. To die for these things that made up my country, that would be a thing worthy of doing if called upon, I thought to myself during this lecture. As fate would have it, when I graduated from college, I was called upon to die for my country. But my country was not threatened in any way and had in fact become the world's greatest threat to survival. It would have been a wanton and futile sacrifice because I was truly going to die for a person who I considered to be mentally ill, a mass murderer, but someone who had gained power somehow, the highest and most powerful office in the world, Richard Nixon, and who took great pride in having gained that power in order to order young men like me to go and die for a philosophy of mass murder, not a justifiable defense of my country as far as I could see. I certainly was not going to die for my country, not the one I knew and loved. And I was certainly not going to die for this mentally deranged individual. This lesson has taught me that there had to be a better way for the people of the world to choose and be represented by their leaders. One man, a president of the United States, had turned the greatest country in the world, something many millions of people had died for, into the worst country in the world, something no one would ever want to die for, and whom many are willing to die in the fight against. One man or woman, especially one man or woman who has shown us all indications of mental illness, should never gain the power to determine the fate of so many millions of other innocent people. No single party or gang should ever gain this ultimate and irreversible power over us. I dedicated my life to this great notion. This book is my latest attempt in that regard.